for whatever reason, I don't know if it was my higher power working for me or what, but something like after not talking to my cousin for 12 years, and I miraculously had this number, and this is in a backpack full of like broken dreams and hopes with names of like, with phone numbers like Spooky, Spider, a bunch of tumbled rocks, a bunch of weird random tweaker.
Yeah.
And yet here's my cousin's number, who I haven't talked to in 12 years. There it is, plain as day. Only 805 number in there. And it was hers, and I called and she answered. What the f***? I don't know how that works out. And then I'm able to get into this sober living. I don't have any money. And then my life just started clicking from the time I just stopped using. I was ready and willing to ask and get help.
Yeah.
Something magic happens when you reach that level of desperation and have the willingness to seek and ask for help. There's just that little bit of humility. Yeah. Like I don't have it figured out for a change. I don't know how long this is gonna last, but at least right now I don't have it. And I was able to put together like eight years.
Welcome to Into Action, brought to you by Touchstone Recovery Center. This episode, we speak to Mike Kessler. Mike and I met, what was it, 9 years ago? Something like that, 8 years ago?
Like that. It could be a little more, a little less. You know, no one's keeping score.
It was a while back. Mike and I were in the same place Lewis and I were at. So I was incarcerated for a crime related to my drug addiction, and I was trying to get sober. I wasn't trying real hard when I first met Mike, but I know as our friendship progressed and as we started going to meetings together and he became my sponsor, like he's a real big reason why I'm sitting here today and why I'm sober and why I'm alive. And he's in recovery. He sponsors a lot of people, and just recently became one of our admissions coordinators here at Touchstone. And I'm really happy to have him on. What's up, Mike? How you doing?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting all sentimental on me.
Well, it's true. So usually on Into Action, like we talk about the way that people get sober, like what led us to the rooms, what led us to treatment, whatever our path was, and like that, you know, that turning point that we all think, you know, like if we're lucky, we get to, and then we turn that corner and we start our path on our recovery journey, right? So usually we talk about that road, you know, where we started, where we ended up, and then, you know, how we got to where we are today and how we stay sober. So I know we've talked a lot over the years. I know God knows we had a lot of time to talk in there. So, but I'm interested to hear more about, like, when you were younger, what experiences did you have with addiction, and like, when did you know that you had an issue with drugs and or alcohol?
Well, I think for me, it became apparent, like a little background, a little context about what it was like when I was younger. You know, obviously my parents divorced. This is not a unique story, but that definitely decreased the amount of maybe support that unified families experienced.
Yeah.
So I was at a disadvantage. So if you start out with not a complete package, perhaps you spend a lot of time looking for the rest of the package. Like, where's my dad? Is that guy real? You know? It turns out he was real. It turns out that my dad had a lot of problems, maybe very similar to the problems that I developed, but early on, my father was involved with a bunch of unsavory actions. You know, we'll just say it like it is: drug dealing. Mm-hmm. And even though I was very young, I watched him tentatively. Like, even to this day, he's still my hero. Then he was my hero, drug dealing hero. Now he's in recovery, dad hero in recovery. You know, but for a large part, he wasn't there. And you know, and as the madness ensued and the chaos was going on around me, and I was only exposed to it like every other weekend. But on those every other weekends, man, it was like the Vegas of addiction. You know, we had bikers, we had gang members, we had all the representatives, man, all of these cool people, and I was naturally drawn to them. I'm like, I don't know what they have, but I want it.
What was that like time frame in your life? Were you 6, 10?
Well, I was exposed at 5, and my first traumatic thing, because I couldn't really put together like what I was witnessing at that age, but I really remember, like, my first traumatic event was I come home from AYSO soccer practice, I'm little, I had the bowl cut, I had the silver teeth, I had everything that made me Mike, and I have the disappointing pictures to prove it, with the blue wall and the big soccer, it looks like Jupiter in my right arm, I'm just like, AYSO, everybody wins. But on that day, I took my winning ass home, after hard fought practice, and I remember the sea of lights, and I'm thinking that's unusual. And like blue, red, and it wasn't just a little of it was a lot of them. Like probably every damn cop in Visalia, And this is on a little town or a little street called James Street, and if you go down Mooney towards Tulare, I think James Street, I think it's now like a Costco. It's the back of where Costco is in Visalia, right? To any Visalia, you know exactly where I'm talking about. So you just go straight down, right? And that was the first time I realized what my dad was doing was wrong. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And then of course they took him away, and all those other people I described, all those bikers, all those gang members, all those people were going with him. I'm thinking, but that was my life. I was exposed to a lot of drugs, drinking, all-nighters, and I thought that was normal,
Yeah.
And on the flip side, I lived with my mom a majority of the time. She's a hardworking single mom, did the best she could, but there's also this substance called wine, and that was her release. It was the Rhine wine. It wasn't like the wine we know today, where it's just like, oh, here you go. This is from the Paso Robles vineyards.
What's the Rhine wine? Like the stuff in the
it's
box?
like Ernest and Gallo. It's like this big green jug with a big black lid. And that was her release. And it was hard. Looking back now, like for most of my life growing up, I was the one wanting to be understood. So I felt like I didn't know why my mom didn't hug me. I didn't know that they loved me. I just assumed that there's a lot of gaps in there.
Yeah.
But these days, through the progress and self-reflection and a lot of internal work done, I understand them now. And then that unlocked a lot of forgiveness on the shortcomings and expectations that I put on them then. So.
Sure. So when you were younger, you were exposed to that until your dad got arrested, and then also through, your mom sounds like she drank a lot like my parents did. When did you start partaking yourself?
Well, not much longer after that. My mom had some friends who had some kids, and of course the parents took off, and I guess it wasn't as strict back in the 80s as it is now. We were like, okay, who's the oldest? And then they raised their hand, and that was like who was watching us for the night while the parents took off. You know what I'm saying? And riding in the back of the trucks, let's just wing it. It's cool. Everybody get back there, And that was my childhood, just a bunch of winging it. And I don't know how it worked out.
We're still here.
But during those times where we were just basically left to fend for ourselves, and there was a group of 3 of us, four sometimes, depending on if the wild card showed up and they all took off to the Moose Lodge to do whatever goes on over there.
Yeah.
Pretty nefarious shit. I'm sure of it, because I didn't see them again till 3 a.m, and they were just smashed drunk, talking loud, yelling, waking us all up, And during those times when the parents were gone, and parents loosely stated, right, we would go explore the wine, and there was like this infamous like tin, and I think it was like a fortune cookie tin or something like that.
With
it had
some
like
stinky green stuff in it.
there was some stinky green stuff in it. It might not be as stinky as like what I smell walking down the California streets these days. I don't know what the hell's in that shit, but I don't know. It's pretty trippy, but it was not like that. But I remember like some green leafy substance in there. A lot of seeds, you know, but some were always like half rolled or half smoked. And my partner out of the group of friends, his name was Jeremy. And we're thinking, well, I wonder what this does, And he goes, my mom told me that I do this because it makes me see better. It helps my eyesight or whatever. And I'm like, well, I want to see better too.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see better.
So we take our 8-year-old little butts out there into the secret fortune cookie tin, and did a little dabbling, and then we also explored what the fascination with that Rhine wine was. What was that about? Why was that more important than us? You know what I'm saying? What's that about? There's got to be something that we're missing because we want to be on the in crowd because we're always just like on the fringes, like outside looking in.
Yeah.
And there was never no like, we wanted so badly just to have that acknowledgement from our parents, I think. And we were willing to do whatever it took to try to get on that inner circle with them. And at least that's the way it felt like looking back,
Sure.
And because it's hard to say exactly what I was seeing and feeling and trying to go all the way back and look through the lens of that adolescent kid. But one thing I knew as a result of like my dad's and my mom's behavior is that I just had this feeling of disconnect and this small feeling like something was always missing, and I believed it, and that determined a lot of my decision makings and behavior choices perhaps going forward because I believed that I wasn't enough, that something's missing and I need to fix it with something else outside of me. And it's probably in that tin and it's probably in that bottle. And I kept chasing those things. And although the two main players, they didn't always stay the tins or that bottle, but I found my calling and the things that I started self-medicating with. But it started probably about 8 years old. 8 years old.
8 o'clock when you were 8 years old.
8 o'clock, 8 p.m. precisely, 8 years old. But yeah. And then it quickly started progressing from there, Obviously, it wasn't everyday use at 8.
No.
These were gaps and experiments, and what I'm talking about, like, during the Moose Lodge hours, they had their witching hour, we had ours, and then we were just, that's just the process it took,
Got it. So I know I know a little bit about like your high school life, and I think you'd bounced around to a couple different high schools. Did you get in trouble when you were in high school, and was it drug related?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked me that. No, I'm just kidding. No, I did. I did have quite the educational journey in the school system. I managed to go to all the high schools, and the continuation, There was a couple instances where, like, I was arrested at school in front of everybody. I didn't know that like my school locker wouldn't be a good place to store like all of my drugs that I started accumulating. And it was just like weed, just really low grade, shaky stuff. But it did the job, and it did the job for a lot of people, especially like at one particular high school, the one I started at, but I worked my way around them all. So, but yeah, so there's always like some crazy stories there. But my experience, although I worked my way through all of those schools independently, we're just talking cumulatively, very small amount of time in the high school before I took the next step and started crossing over to probably going to school inside juvenile hall. Mm-hmm. That's where A lot of my stuff was. And then eventually I ended up in the probation school where my probation officer came and picked me up and took me to school, and they kind of locked the doors. And so I wouldn't leave,
Yeah.
And I wasn't the only one. There was other people that had the similar situations going on, but.
Well, I mean, when we met, you had already, I think at that point you had 6 years or something already, maybe 5. It was, oh yeah. So I guess that tells us how long ago it was. So it was about 7 years ago, I think we met. And since then, you've obviously, it's hard for me to relate the person that I see today and that I know today to like the person we're talking about back in high school. And some of the other stories you've told me. So when did you start getting into to the addictive everyday use where I know heroin's a part of your story, it's a part of my story. When did it get real bad? And then what got you sober? Like when did it stop?
It definitely started taking a turn. It got ramped up. And it's probably right around right as the high school concluded. I found cocaine, and it did something to me that I thought I'd found my lost love, my first love, it was her, it checked all the boxes for me. I felt immediate escape. I felt somewhat invincible. Like all my problems went away. All my immediate needs, from my parents, went away. And what it did was enabled me to it gave me the ability to just say F it and just cut everybody off. It didn't matter. I knew what I had to do. I had a purpose, and that was just to keep doing this as much as I could, as often as I could. And it didn't matter who I had to burn, bully, or bloody to get whatever I needed. And I was just a little guy, but I mean, there's ways and means to just keep the party going. Yeah. And from that moment on, it slowly started progressing. And that period, there's a couple extensive incarcerations in there where it just bounced me to group homes. And if I didn't like where it was at, say one was in Reading, they sent me there and, and they're like, we're going to shave your head, we're going to, uniformity. Fuck you are, you know what I mean? So I made this little sheet rope, and I just get down, and then I just hitchhiked from Reading back to Visalia. I was like, I'm not doing that,
Yep.
And it's not like I was looking to escape my trouble, because I went back down to the probation department. So I don't know what you guys are thinking. Let's just go back to juvenile hall. I'm not living in Reading. Have you been there? And that was my attitude towards them. It was very. My circle is like this.
Yeah.
Know that first. And all I can see is really, because I knew in those times of incarceration, especially after my addiction had escalated, that when I was under the influence or in active addiction, a lot of the things that caused me pain or discomfort weren't really present, and a whole lot of give a fuck was diminished.
Yeah.
Or expounded, whatever you want to say. It was exaggerated, it was okay. But the second you remove those substances that made everything seem okay,
They all came crashing back at you.
They came crashing back, and they were super compounded and condensed, and it was like the frozen orange juice version. You know what I mean? It's like it's like the problems out here are so simple, but when you're in a prison setting, it is that condensed orange juice. It's just super heavy and thick, and if you don't know how to dilute it in a healthy manner, guess what? It stays thick, condensed, and you're ever just lick the frozen orange juice for whatever reason. You're just like, oh, yep. I'm just like, whoa, that's powerful shit.
Yeah, you got to mix it. I get
it.
You've had periods of sobriety. Well, I guess tell me about when you started, when you started trying to change, and how long did it take you to actually get some meaningful time and sobriety under your belt?
Well, after the cocaine, then there was I discovered the meth. I just love meth. You know, it did for me what cocaine. I thought cocaine was first love, but I cheated on her regularly with meth.
It's cheaper and lasted longer.
It's cheaper and lasted longer. You know, I mean, there's a funny story when the first time I did it. I mean, that might be for another podcast. It'll take too long. You know,
Maybe.
You know, I mean, I was like, oh my god. You know, I was like crying because I felt so good. All kinds of weird shit. You know, I thought I was gonna die at the same time. So you enter all those elements. It's kind of like surfing, where you kind of just pedal out, and you're like, oh my god, it has all the right things. You're like, I might die. The sharks might eat me. I could drown. You know, all these different things, but all those danger. That's what I like. You know, give me more of that, please. You know, you know. So, but I also discovered like heroin and stuff like that. But heroin's more of a part of my story, like later on. You know, outside of like sales and distribution, like selling it way before it was like mainstream like it is now. Now it's just the opiates it came out into the mainstream probably about the time of this last incarceration. Mm-hmm. And that the last incarceration is one of the most pivotal times in my life. But if we rewind beyond that, and we go to a time frame from like about 2001 or so, of course, at the time I think I was living in Bakersfield. And of course, I've always had like a job, and I've always been able to maintain for a little bit, but I just don't know what to do when life is so good. I don't know how to do that well. Mm-hmm. So, but I identify more with the people in the gutter. I know how to be sad, bitter, angry, lonely, upset, or whatever. I don't know how to really be successful, kind, loving, accepting, tolerant. I don't, it weirds me out. Responsible, what the fuck? Who made up that word? You know? Probably the same person that made up February or Wednesday. The same person that spelled those words, responsible. I'm sure they're behind it, you know. But, that's, you know, I'm sure of it, you know. But there was a time, probably 2001, where I created a bunch of wreckage in Bakersfield. I was using, but the using and the euphoria or the love affair was starting to wane. Like the drugs and the substances no longer were working. The only thing I was getting was more problems and potentially more warrants, depending on how you look at it. It's just all wording, you know. But like I was starting to just fall apart, and everything was like the frayed stitches were starting to become apparent, you know. No matter how many layers I tried to put on, the drugs stopped being effective, and they weren't taking away the things I was initially using them for. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to hurt. I didn't want to feel. I didn't want to know, you know. I didn't want to deal with any of that shit. So, in this moment of desperation mixed with manipulation, I called a family member up in Morro Bay. I said, hey, I got some shit going on. I just need a place to detox and lay low. I don't want to. I knew I needed to change. I'd been exposed to AA meetings. I mean, my first court card was like at 12. You know what I mean? You know, that was, how do you do that? And that's not going to work. But I mean, that's what they had, you know?
Yeah.
You know, Bill W.'s been around for a long time, you know? I mean, give him to the kid. Yeah, I don't know. That was so weird. But it was just another thing of just trying to create accountability and, you know, a track record. But at 12, who's ready? I don't know many. But so I called a family member and I said, hey, I need a place to lay low. And I'm not quite sure that I want to like go into the recovery thing, but I know I need to do something because the drugs aren't working. You know, so I call her. I'm like, look, I need a place to go. And she lives. She has a place in Morro Bay, but she also has like this trailer in Sea Canyon. Ever been to Sea Canyon?
I don't think
so. It's like when you're going to Avila Beach, and you just make a right towards like Gopher Farms or something, where all the apples, apple cider. Just follow the apple cider signs and go all the way to the end. Okay. To this deep forest thing, right? So it's like Big Sky, and it's like right on the opposite side of Diablo power plant. You know, it's like in the hills. You got to kind of go back there, and it looks like Return of the Jedi shit. You know, and if you're ever coming down on drugs and at night, Like the stars look big. There's no light pollution, and the cows are extraordinarily big and scary. When you're just like at 3 a.m, that's all hay, and they're all hay. It's just awkward. And but I told her, I said, look, I said, can I stay at the trailer? And she's like, yeah. Just a little hesitation, but because this is like the cousin you never talk to. It's like, there's like 12-year gaps, and I just randomly happened to have her number somehow. And I go there, and I asked her, well, I'm going to need a case of cup of noodles and some anything soft food, you know what I mean? And 2 gallons of milk. Kind of was like, and she's like, okay. And then I was like, okay, So we had a contract, and that's all it took. And so I went there, and I slept it off. And immediately when I started coming to, I started combing the resources available in San Luis Obispo County. And I found myself a sober living, and I checked in there. And it was an extensive one. It had like a lot of rules and mandatory meetings, and H&I brought meetings in there, you know what I mean? And it was a really good exposure and a nice way to segue in. And it gave me a little bit of first taste of stability and purpose outside of the pursuit of the needing and wanting and getting more, you know, without like destruction. I wasn't causing any more harm. I still had a lot of harm to deal with, and a lot of records to deal with, but I didn't have to do anything today. And it was nice to be able to just focus on something else. And it gave me the way to start coping and dealing with a lot of the hurt that had led me to even using it in the first place, That place was called Project Amend. And from there, I was able to build upon a foundation and really get in. I mean, I got the job, you know what I mean? I got a sponsor, this guy that ran it, his name was Patrick McKnight, I'll never fucking forget him. And I went in there and I told him my story, and he gave me a hug, and then he fucking kissed me on the cheek, and I was like, whoa, hold on, buddy. You know what I mean? But he goes, hey, it's going to be okay. And he told me, he goes, your sponsor's going to be here at 2 p.m. Be ready. He'll be on the back deck. I'm like, what the fuck? Is that how it works? You know what I mean? That's not the way that's not what they say in the meetings. But he, like, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was my higher power working for me or what, but something, like, after not talking to my cousin for 12 years, and I miraculously had this number, and this is in a backpack full of like broken dreams and hopes, with names of like, with phone numbers like Spooky, Spider, a bunch of tumbled rocks, a bunch of weird random tweaker shit. Yeah. And yet here's my cousin's number, who I haven't talked to in 12 years. There it is, plain as day. Only 805 number in there. And it was hers, and I called and she answered. What the fuck? I don't know how that works out. And then I'm able to get into this sober living. I don't have any money. And then I get in, they put me in there. Patrick fucking does that weird introduction, kisses me on the cheek, and gives me a sponsor. And then my life just started clicking from the time I just stopped using. I was ready and willing to ask and need and get help. Yeah. Something magic happens when you reach that level of desperation and have the willingness to seek and ask for help. There's just that little bit of humility. Yeah. Like I don't have it figured out for a change. I don't know how long this is gonna last, but at least right now I don't have it. And I was able to put together like eight years, and it's crazy.
What happened at the end of the 8 years? And like, because now I know right now you have 11.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm doing good now. I'm on a winning streak right now. Yeah. Nobody gets here on a losing streak or a winning streak. We're all just.
No one starts on a winning streak.
Yeah. No one starts on a winning streak. So what had happened is like all the things that were starting to click as a result of working a solid program with a sponsor who has a sponsor who's working the steps. Everybody's going to meetings. They involve a service and sponsorship, all the things that you might hear if you come to a meeting, and they might sound redundant, like, and I really bought all in. I believed all that stuff with my whole heart. But sometimes in our recovery, especially when you perhaps, at least in my experience, when an individual reaches perhaps the, like say, the 7-year mark or the 5-year mark, life's kind of mellowed out. You kind of reach some sense of stability in a sense.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the major problems, like, oh, I don't know, how am I going to get my license? I don't know how to fill out a job application. All those things you've already done, and you kind of progress a little bit. And not that those aren't valid, because those are valid, hard, and scary, especially when you don't know how to do it. Especially when you don't know how to spell, or I had a lot of problems. But once I figured out and was able to tackle and conquer a lot of those problems, somewhere around the 5-year mark for me, I stopped doing a lot of those things. Like, I didn't have a commitment, or I let commitments lapse without getting a new one. I stopped really kind of working steps. And as a result of not working steps for me, if you're an addict like me, it's paramount to keep working the steps continuously. That's what I found by what I'm about to tell you, is that I'm really good about getting my feelings hurt. I'm really good about setting expectations on people. And I'm really good about collecting resentments as a result. And resentments are killer for me. And somewhere in my program at that time, I must have had a time and space set aside, And a lot of people call those reservations. Mm-hmm. Like if this or this or this happens, fucking I'm out, man. Not doing that anymore. And what that means is that I'm willing to sacrifice it all and anything I got in my life to go use again. If I really spoke honestly, it says, my feelings are hurt. I don't know how to talk to you about it. I want it to change, but I don't know how to do it. That's what I'm really trying to communicate. But how it comes out is like, fuck you, man. I'm going to burn you and fuck up your life. And I'm going to burn mine down to the ground too. That's what it looks like in real time. But what I mean to say is that I'm hurt, I'm scared, I don't know what to do, but I'm too afraid to ask for help.
Yep.
That's what it means. Inside, I just don't know how to articulate it.
Yeah.
When it hurts so bad, when I'm so mad and so frustrated, but I lack the ability to honestly and openly communicate what's going on. But I only learned how to do that through the process of recovery. And when I stopped doing those the main basics, go to meetings, call your sponsor, work the steps, give back. If I stop doing those fundamental elements, I'm going to not be able to communicate honestly. I'm going to fuck up my life. And it's probably going to impact those around me that are now a part of it, so.
I remember the first time I went all the way through the steps was with you. And
do you remember where we went over it when I had you come over to the room, to my cell?
Yeah, but every step we did that?
No. That was just one of them where I would sit on my toilet.
You did that?
Yeah, and you'd sit on my chair.
I don't remember that at all.
Oh man, you must not have been ready.
I remember you made me like meticulously go through the guide and answer all those questions, especially step 1. I think it took me 2 or 3 months to get through it.
What was the first thing I usually have you do? What was the first thing? Do you remember?
Make a list of everyone I know?
No,
that was on step 4.
That was step 4.
I don't remember, man. You tell me.
I usually have them go through the dots. This is how I vet out the people that are real. And there's a series of dots in the working book. You
made me highlight a bunch of shit.
I always make you highlight and everything that relates, and we do a little talking. But I'll have you number all the dots. Do you remember how many dots there are?
No, I have no idea. But I remember you did that.
Yeah. Okay.
How many dots are there?
I think there's 69.
69 dots. Okay.
Yeah. But once people, it's an easy way to vet to just, one, it tells me where they're at.
Yeah.
It's a very, very diminished assessment. Trust me. I don't know how much good data it yields, but what it does is a lot of people, that's a lot of dots. That's a lot of dots, man.
Can't do it.
That's a lot of dots, buddy.
High. Yeah. It makes sense that you kind of vet people, because I know there's been a couple people that have asked me to sponsor them that, you say yes, and then that's it. They never call you after that.
Thanks. Can you sign here?
Yeah. So anyway, what I was going to say is when the first time I went through the steps, I remember you kept telling me I was full of shit. Like, do it again. It was step one.
Yeah.
Yeah, which you were right. And then what I noticed, like the first time going through them, especially the big one, or the big one for me was 4. Like I left stuff out, and I knew I left it out on purpose because I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want you to know about it. I didn't want anyone to know about it, and I figured I didn't have to tell anybody, you know. So I left a bunch of stuff out, and I think every time you go through them, you chip away at that kind of stuff. And the last time I went through them, I don't think I left anything out intentionally. I really don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's fair because sometimes, you know, I think a lot of people, especially with step 4, and I think we had this a little bit of this conversation maybe earlier this week when we were just, you know, by chance we're just talking about steps or something like that.
Yeah.
Or where a lot of people will start thinking, like, I don't know about resentments, you know. I mean, now I have them do it out of it. There's a bunch of different ways that I'll have them go through the steps. I have a few different options depending on the person and what I think will be the best way. Let's just fucking get them done and we can do it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know, the main thing is let's get something done and let's get some completions under our belt. Let's move the chains, let's get a first down and work towards touchdown, you know? Let's just get. But I think a lot of times that some people are so, perhaps we hold on really tight to certain things. So it's like, no, I'm not telling anybody that. It's
embarrassing.
That's between me and God and my grave, you know, whatever, you know. We are more willing to harbor or hold on to not only that secret, but the guilt and shame that's attached to it. It's like it's easier to deal with than just that. Those little moments like, if I tell him everything, he's gonna know who I really am.
Yeah.
Type of moment, or those moments. It's kind of like when you're dating. He's like, oh my God. But next thing you know, you're farting in front of her, and it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And it turns out they love you anyway. Yeah. You know. And I'm a firm believer that a lot of those secrets will eventually come out when the individual's ready, and that, especially if you're working with me, I'm probably gonna love you anyway. You know, I could say without a doubt, like 99 percentile, you know, nothing's 100, but with certainty that I've never not shared something that was awkward and uncomfortable that I thought was so unique to me and not received back a similar shared experience from the person that I'm going through the steps with. Sure. And I think that eventually if you're not able to share that kind of thing, then perhaps maybe another sponsor might be the best thing, you know?
Good point.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's not really about it's not like the dynamic of relationship changed. And if you got a good sponsor currently, they'll totally know exactly what time it is and encourage you to say, like, you know, hey, this person might be a guy to talk to, you know what I mean? Because I will refer you out, you know what I mean? I just want you to get what you need. Yeah. And that's freedom from active addiction, you know what I mean? But yeah.
So now with 11 years sobriety, I know some of the people that I've talked to on this podcast have most, I think, still go to meetings, have a sponsor. You know, they play an active part in their recovery, and that's through a 12-step program, whether it's NAAA, CA, HA, whatever. What do you do? How do you stay sober?
Whoa, that's a big question. Well, you know, I more often than not, I go to NA, but it's in a nice little twist. My sponsor and I, we do our steps through AA now. You know, we just mix it up. We're crazy.
Yeah.
But, you know, truth be told, I'm like a word nerd, and I like the old school language in the AA literature. So I will always try to revert back to the, you know, foundation, you know. Yeah. But more often than not, I find myself in both fellowships, but I regularly attend a men's meeting. You know, for me, I think if I remove like the alternate sex, it diminishes my showmanship you know, my need for pageantry or whatever. And I get a real deal. And there's a group of like 35 guys that go there, and on any given night, you go around the room, there could be like, I mean, no shit, like over 400 years of clean time.
Yeah.
And there's over 100 of them are just within like, you know, one guy just took 50 years. But I have a regular commitment on Friday, and I have another commitment on Thursday. And those are my three things that I do. And I'm obviously working with guys going through the steps, you know, whether they're on the streets or in prison. I actively sponsor 7 people that are currently incarcerated right now. I work actively with sponsorship behind the walls for Narcotics Anonymous. And that's pretty much what I do on a regular basis. So at any given time, I could be getting a collect call from prison or a call from somebody. But I mean, I'll give out my number to anybody. And if they call asking for help, I'm available almost any time and almost any situation, you know. And as a result, I've been able to put together a pretty meaningful life. And one I care truly a lot about these days. And that's weird in itself, you know.
Yep.
Like the whole dynamic of us just sitting here together is still so surreal, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if you go to our origin story, and the fact that, you know, the Visalia linkage, it's never not going to be interesting when I reflect back to it. I mean, maybe that's the schooling I've done, and then the way I look at information now, or just interactions, and most certainly what people are organizing around, like the whole recovery vibe, and then you got our personal vibe that's linked with recovery vibe, and then what you've done. You know, it's just so it's mind blowing.
Yep.
Considering how reduced the parameters we set on us, and those limitations, and how big our world was. Like, it was like this big.
Yeah.
And
it gets small quick.
And we forgot about this big, huge world that's out here.
I always think about...
Yeah, we chose to live in that circle. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's weird.
So weird.
I always think about the number of people that get incarcerated that, you know, I mean, the recidivism rate is like 80% in California. So, and I think what that percentage means is, I think the last time I read it, at least, I remember it being within a year of being released, they will be back in prison.
Yeah.
Which that's nuts.
Yeah.
And then if you look at like how difficult it is to stay out, just based on that freaking statistic right there, how difficult it is to stay out of prison or jail, how difficult it is to stay sober, those statistics are mind-boggling as well. Like how many people actually achieve long-term sobriety that have alcoholism or addiction. And, you know, if you look at those odds and you put them together, and then you look at what we're doing right now, it's pretty badass. I love it.
Super badass.
You know, we're working in treatment. We're helping people achieve long-term sobriety. We're helping people get connected to the recovery community. It's neat. It's really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for helping me get sober, man, and keeping me sober today. I appreciate you.
Yeah. You know, we're only, it all equates to the choices that we make, and what are we going to do with the information? I mean, the relief and freedom is available to all if they're willing.
Yep.
You know.
Love you, buddy.
Love you, buddy.